I'm Troy Evans, and on today's show, Cassius Butts, founder of Capital Fortitude Business Advisors. Cassius, welcome to the show.
Troy, good morning. Well, and thanks for having me.
My pleasure, brother. Been wanting to get you on here for a minute. I know you have plenty of information and expertise to give the listeners.
Yes.
And so I want to dive right in and start specifically with your upbringing in Philadelphia.
Yeah.
And what about the city of Philadelphia and your influences led you to be interested in black business and the positions that you hold today?
Certainly. Well, I will tell you, it really starts at home. I come from a family of entrepreneurs, educators, and folks who are in the pulpit. And so a lot of what you will see as it pertains to my entrepreneurial efforts come from really me seeing that as a kid. Born in Philly, my grandfather owned a construction company. And my grandmother, she was the secretary, she was a project manager, and she basically ran the house, right? But getting the chance to see that from my grandparents was just phenomenal. My brother and I would spend summers with them and seeing my grandfather work and run his company. But not only just that, we had a chance to really learn what it really meant to really make a dollar. My brother and I, we wanted these Star Wars sheets when we were kids, and so we went to my mom and dad's like, hey, we love to have these Star Wars sheets, and my mom was like, well, I'm just not going to give you the money, you have to earn it,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but it is back then. It's
right.
Teaching the lesson. So the lesson was, what can you do to make money? So we used to love these icy cups where you put Kool-Aid in them, and we would freeze them. That was our lollipops.
Right.
And so my brother and I were like, well, hey, if we sell these, my mom's like, if we sell these to your friends, you can make 25 cents. It's like, all right. So we got a bunch of Dixie cups, if you will, and we put Kool-Aid in and we started selling to the friends on the street in the block for 25 cents. And we started making a lot of money, Troy. And then one day I came home, I said, Mom, if we get a bigger cup, can we sell it for 50 cents? She said, yeah, now you're thinking. So, we sold so many of those icy pops all summer. We had not only just enough for the Star Wars sheets. We bought like the curtains and the pillows and, a couple of action figures. That was our first start at entrepreneurial.
And around what age were you when you were doing that?
Yeah, so I was in second grade.
Okay.
I was in second grade. So entrepreneurialism is something that I learned just before I could really learn what it really meant to really do algebra. We just knew how to count quarters, and then start turning those quarters into dollars, and then we started saving them, and then we started looking about other things that we wanted to do. By that time, my family, my father, my mother, father, we moved to Orlando, and my late father, he was an aerospace engineer. By day, he worked for then Martin Marietta, which is now Lockheed Martin. But my mother, she was in education. She was educated, but she also enjoyed having a family-owned daycare. And so she ran a family-owned daycare. And my father, when he would come home, he would build barbecue pits. Like the kind, those big black pits you see. He would put them together as an engineer. That's what they do.
Right.
And so he would sell them to his boys and to his lodge brothers and the rest of them. And I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. So my brother and I saw this. We were like, we want to do something. So we're in Florida now, right? And we're like, well, what can we do? So we got a lawnmower. We started cutting grass, plenty of grass in Florida.
Right.
It grows fast. So we started a lawn care business. And then we realized we could do something else. We started a car wash business. Again, all this is really before 7th grade, before I was 13. We were doing all these different businesses. And so I would have to say just come seeing it at home first gave us the mindset that you can really make a difference yourself. You have the time, you have the talent. You just put your mind and effort together. Anything you really want could come to fruition.
Important because, especially in black households, that example is not there. So you being able to see, now it may be a little bit more prevalent, but we're talking about several decades ago, 70s and whatnot. That wasn't that prevalent. So you were blessed from that sense.
I would definitely say I was, and I think for my brother and I, we didn't realize what we being groomed and trained in, but just moving fast forward, matriculating through high school, I was involved in different things like junior achievement and all those different programs you think you hear about, but you really realize that this is making a difference in your life. My brother was involved in junior achievement. They started making projects and they would sell them. We would play football and we would sell the candy on the corner, the chocolate bars. So having that sales mindset, that marketing mindset was really just embedded in us at an early age. But went off to college, went up to Morehouse College, and I wanted to. What I thought I wanted to be an industrial organizational psychologist.
Okay.
I wanted to be that shrink, if you call, in the corporate office that helps people to get through their day.
Right.
It's just something I enjoy doing, and what I thought I would enjoy doing. My first internship was at Martin Marietta. I didn't tell my dad. I went through the mayor's summer program, and they had one slot available, and it was in HR at Martin Lockheed. And so I pretty much did a lot of filing and follow up on employees' requests. But that's when I thought that's what I wanted to do. But, fate has a way of changing the way that you think about things. I decided that I wanted to focus on something that was going to make differences in communities as a whole. I wasn't sure what it was. So going through Morehouse, I've really just realized that, maybe I'm going to do something that's, in business. I was trying to find myself again. I'm not going to sit there and act like I had it all together. I didn't. Even going through Morehouse, I was just trying to figure it out. I knew I had a talent, but I didn't know how to channel it. My brother went off to school at FAMU, so we didn't get a chance to really kind of bond a lot during those times. And so after finishing there, I worked for a marketing company based in Atlanta, MBNA Bank America. We actually ran a call center. I was one of the managers there. We sold affinity cards to entities such as NASCAR, NEA, organizations like that. And I was like, okay, this is great. And I went through a couple of different businesses working in their marketing department. And then it hit me one day. I was working for a financial institution I won't name. And they sent me out to a place called Forsyth County. This time Oprah Winfrey was doing her show about the non-existence of folks of color in those particular communities. And so the CRA Act, Community Reinvestment Act, had just come out. They sent me out there, say, hey, here's our guy.
Right.
This is the one.
Right.
And so I'm out there, and they're like, hey, I need to talk to the branch manager. I'm like, oh, that's me. Like, oh, get out the way. It can't be you.
Right.
You're too young. You don't look like us. You move.
Right.
But I went to my office one day, Troy, and I was praying. And I was like, God, just guide me. Tell me, what is that you want me to do? Mm-hmm. And just as much as you can hear my voice, I felt a presence, not a voice, but I felt a presence say, leave. Mm-hmm. One thing I know about growing up in a black families, especially a family of faith, we got to be obedient. Mm-hmm. Next day I went downtown. I was in Atlanta, and I turned my resignation. And I didn't know what I was going to do, but I knew I was being led to do something greater. It was at that time that I looked back and said, hey, use your determination, your experiences that you used growing up. So at that time, I probably had collected like 3,000 CDs. Mm-hmm. And I started selling my CDs back to places like Merry-Go-Round, because you get like $10 a CD, right. $5 CD. So I started selling them and trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And I knew I wanted to go to law school, grad school, seminary school. I couldn't figure it out. But I ran into this giant named Maynard Jackson. Mm-hmm. And he was like, hey, you're that guy that's always walking around talking to people, and people ask you to help them with their business plans. And he said, yeah. He said, come here. So he kind of took me underneath his wing. He started to show me the ropes of what it really meant to have a business, to run a business, and to connect to your communities as a whole. And I would say the next thing I know, Troy, I'm trying to figure out these next steps. And I get a call for internship at the City of Atlanta, Office of Contract Compliance, and I learned what it really meant to do business with a municipal. I was in graduate school at this time, Clark Atlanta University, and Mayor Jackson wanted me to do my graduate paper on the City of Atlanta's Equal Business Opportunity Program, to make sure that minority and women had opportunity to participate with the City of Atlanta, have contracts. And again, I'm having a focus on what it really meant to be a person of color or a person who's considered a minority and to do business on a large scale. And that was my lane. And I said, I'm going to stay in this lane. And I did. I wrote the paper. Some people heard about it. And I was in a graduate program for NFBPA, National Forum Black Public Administrators, and they said, hey, we have this new program out of Georgia Pacific. We'd like for you to help with the supplier diversity program. I said, okay, great. I did, and I left my internship and I started working on that project, and we did the project. In Georgia Pacific, they won the Supplier Diversity Company of the Year the next year, and I was like, this is my lane.
Right.
I'm gonna stay in that.
Right.
Yeah.
That's fascinating. So, so I've had a few people on the show already who talked about the uniqueness of Atlanta.
Yes.
The uniqueness of Morehouse, the uniqueness of Maynard Jackson reaching out and providing mentorship.
Yes.
And it sounds like you've touched on all of those things and leading up to that point in your life. Talk to me a little bit about what attracted you to the city and the university and the role that having a strong mentor like Maynard Jackson in your life played.
Sure. I would say growing up in Philly initially, I would go through my grandparents' records, and they had speeches of Dr. Martin Luther King. And I would listen to those speeches. And I was so amazed by the way that he would move a crowd. I was amazed by his words would make people feel so good about themselves. And I was like, man, I like that. I want that. I want to know how does that work. And when I learned that he went to Morehouse, I was like, I gotta go to Morehouse.
Right.
But I had a couple of guys ahead of me. I played football in high school. So I have to be honest with you, it wasn't an easy task just getting up and going to Morehouse. At that time, I was a running back, and I was getting a lot of offers from a lot of different schools. I wasn't thinking about HBCUs at all. I wasn't until I got hurt in practice one day, and I broke my shoulder. And I'm sitting there laying on my back and looking up at the sky like, man, what am I going to do now? Well, all the schools stopped calling after that. And I had to figure it out. And I took a HBCU tour with an organization called SECME, which focuses on science, engineering, et cetera. And so we went to all the HBCUs. I came to Atlanta. I had never seen anything like that.
Right.
You know, I actually seeing people of color in influential positions. I mean, we saw it a little bit in Philly, but in Atlanta it was different. You know, I would turn on the television and I see a person that looks like me. I would go to the bank and I see the branch manager and a person looks like me. I would, go into turn on a city event or a government event as a person. And I was like, wow, this is okay. But I realized, I said, I don't know what this is, but I want to be a part of this.
Right.
So for me, I think that's what probably attracted me to Atlanta. And again, I like to say that things were ordained. Fast forwarding, really going through the process I went through from a professional point of view was one thing, but it was another thing when I stopped. I went back to graduate school, and I started to realize that this Atlanta University system, this center, was really a first of its kind that I knew of. And so just having that energy just made me feel good about myself. And I like feeling good about myself.
Right.
And I come from a family that if you move your ego out the way and you treat people the right way, good things can happen to you. So I think Maynard was someone who instilled that in me, just to continue to work hard, to be determined. My father always determined me. He had such a strong work ethic. He would wake up at 5:30 every morning, drive to Cape Canaveral, come back, build his businesses on the side. And I would see that, and I would see my mother running her businesses. And so it was embedded in us. And so I got a chance to see that again under the mentorship of Maynard Jackson. But for me, I just realized it wasn't about me. I thought that my efforts were going to make changes in a positive way to our respective communities. And so, I applied for a fellowship with the federal government, and 10,000 folks applied that year. I was one of the 400 guys accepted as a presidential management fellow in the Bush administration. It's a fast-track management trainee program, the fellows program. And so I had 21 job offers to go to Washington, D.C., and I took the one offer at HUD because Mayor Jackson said he wanted me to stay in Atlanta. He said it was a call in my life. He said I couldn't see it. He said, but I can. He said I can see it. You can't see it, but I can see it. You're supposed to be here.
Right.
He said, promise you me you'll stay here.
Right.
And I did. So I took the one job offer at HUD, and I did pretty well there. But at the same time, I volunteered for other people's campaigns. I helped to get them into elected office. Didn't get too deep into the politics. I just helped for people to fulfill their dreams. And I feel like, our my calling says that, my faith says that if you can be have dominion over somebody else's dreams and be supportive of them, your dreams can come to have that same success, if not more. So a lot of elected officials I've helped, a lot of campaigns I've volunteered my times. And I would tell you, Troy, it wasn't just all persons who were on the Democratic side. I had persons who were on the conservative side. I didn't get involved in the politics. And I'm not saying that one is better than the other. I just come from a place of supporting people.
Right.
When you go into a restaurant, you go into a car wash, you go into any type of place for service, you don't act on what is their political affiliation.
Right.
And whatever that is, you say, oh, I don't like that, and leave. No, you stay there and you get the service.
Right.
Right? And I think that's something that many of us as practitioners and professionals, we miss when we're trying to be supportive of someone. It doesn't mean that you have to be a part of that agenda, but you can be supportive of that individual that's trying to make positive difference.
Right. So you didn't dive that much into the political side, and yet you, at this point in your life, you are starting to blend the economic side of community building with political influence that has to go side by side. Talk to me about how those two are married together,
Right.
and how they support each other's agenda.
Sure. So I think that it happens in a very unique way. In Philly, as a kid, I would box from time to time. My grandfather was a boxer, and Muhammad Ali was prevalent in my life. He actually taught me different boxing techniques. And for me, I will always cherish those memories.
I mean, that's the greatest of all time.
All time, right? All time. I would say, to answer your question, it's almost like this. Until Ali passed, and it was a beautiful homegoing service in Louisville, everyone from the world was there. Most people don't know that one of his closest friends was Senator John McCain.
Okay.
Senator John McCain and Muhammad Ali were tight like brothers. It wasn't about politics. It was about business, and it was about influence. And I began to model a lot of what I do and how I navigate through my professional career the same way. And so how they join, to your question, it really gets to a point where you have to make decisions that's going to make a positive impact and not let your political beliefs change the trajectory in which things are set out for you. So what does that mean? I was a presidential fellow in the Bush administration. But when I met a senator from Illinois who said he wanted to be the leader of the free world. At that time, he said, I was here in Atlanta. He said, you got a funny name like me. He said, you support me, I'll never forget it. And his name was Barack Obama, our 44th president of the United States. So it's not a coincidence, just in 2011, that I got a call from Washington to be appointed as regional administrator for the U.S. Small Business Administration, the first African-American in Region 4 ever. And I didn't know that at that time. Actually, I had a banker tell me that after I was in the role. But I would tell you, Troy, when I was in Washington, they were asking me a series of questions. They said, well, Cassius, you, let's see here, you were appointed to serve in a role in workforce development. I won't name the elected official, by this elected official who was a conservative. And I said, okay, yes. Oh, okay, and we also saw that your grandfather ran for office in Orlando, and although he did not designate it, we know he was a Republican, he was a conservative. I was like, yeah, that's true. Yeah. And I'm sitting here like, okay, I don't have this job, Right. And they said, well, you know what? You're exactly who we want. We want someone who's able to work across party lines, that sees the bigger picture, that just wants to get the job done. And I was like, wow.
Right.
So to answer your question, really, in our society, yes, headlines look like they come from left or right, red or blue, but really it comes from green. Access to capital is what really changes and makes this country go around, Troy. Over 99% of the economy in this country runs off of small business. So we may see a large corporation like a Walmart or Home Depot, whatever, what have you, but there are products in those stores, and those products are made by what? Small businesses, right? Those are all people who actually are selling their product under those different entities. And so when you think about it from that regard, politics doesn't matter. You're looking at economic opportunities. And so when you talk about economic development and changes in our respective communities, we would like to make sure that we have proper housing. We like to make sure that we have access to capital. We also would like to make sure that we have a sound education to stand on, to make sound and vivid decisions about how to make differences, not in our lives, but our children's lives and our children's lives. That has nothing to do with politics. And so that's my mindset. And so I see that's how I walk every day. I try to treat everyone the same. I try not to get involved into their personal space or their politics. I just try to make good things happen because I think it was an ordained thing to do.
Right. Calvin Coolidge said, and I agreed, the business of America is business. Right. So
Yes.
I like what you said. Is there's no red or blue, it's green.
That's right.
Especially in America.
Yes.
So you get the call.
Yeah.
To become the first black individual appointed to run the Southeast for the Small Business Administration.
Yes.
And that's a very powerful position because we just illustrated the importance of capital.
Yes.
Which black entrepreneurs in particular have a very hard time finding.
Yes.
And securing. Talk to me a little bit about why you think that is, that it is more difficult to find capital if you're a black entrepreneur, and some of the things you did to help overcome those obstacles.
Sure. I would tell you one of the things a challenge to get access to capital, particularly for businesses of color, black or brown, is making certain that your credit is at an acceptable level where people feel comfortable lending you money. Having good practices, having your books together, having clean books together, make sure that your accounting is sound. Being in a place where you've been in business, but also your taxes are being paid. All these things seem like just simple little things, but they all add up to a financial institution saying, yes, we'd like to take a chance on you and lend you capital. And so, what I wanted to do when I came into my role as regional administrator for SBA, I formed over 100 strategic alliance memorandums. What does that mean? That means that we look to partner with entities such as the National Minority Supplier Development Council, or the Georgia Minority Supplier Development Council, or the Florida Minority Supplier Development Council. We partner with the Asian American Pacific Islander Initiative. We partner with the Florida Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. We partner with the Greater Women Business Council. And what does that mean? That means that I ask our team, my staff, to go to these entities, talk to them about what type of products and services are being offered at SBA. And so when they're applying for them, they actually know two things. They actually know what type of product they're getting, and they know when to actually apply for those type of products. And I think that that's something that we miss in other, let's just say, other opportunities to really enhance our communities. We have to educate our businesses about access to capital, and what does it mean to not just to get it, but to maintain it. I was really more focused on the lending rate. I was more focused on how many businesses we actually lent money to, and how many of those businesses stayed in business over 5 years. And so I'm happy to say that during my tenure at SBA, we backed over $30 billion to small businesses. Is one of the highest records in SBA's history. And the way that we did it, Troy, is that we used the strategic alliances that I actually helped to create across every platform. I actually did a strategic alliance with the HBCUs to go to historical black colleges and university and talk to the students and the faculty and the staff about how to get access to capital. And I thought it was important, to your point, because that's where a lot of our black businesses are. I would say over 65% of our executives of color come from HBCUs, right? And so just knowing that, I said, hey, here's an opportunity to educate these respective individuals. My grandfather was a graduate of College. My grandmother was a graduate of Tuskegee. My other grandmother was a graduate of Benedict College. My father went to Hampton. My brother went to Florida A&M. I went to Morehouse in Clark, Atlanta. So I'm all about HBCUs and making sure that those opportunities were there, because our relatives and people who we grew up with didn't have opportunities to go to predominantly white institutions. So there is the presence of HBCUs, and so we have to support them. And by doing that, it's making sure we're giving back and educating them the proper way. And so that's how, really coming to this place of learning how to get access to capital, but learning how to educate was just as important about getting access to capital. Educating the consumer about how to get this is priority number one.
And I would also say that, kind of going back to something we alluded to at the beginning of the conversation, many of the black entrepreneurs need that education because they didn't have that example when they were children to look at their parents or their grandparents and see it firsthand. And when you don't have that real life example in your immediate sight, you need another supplemental education opportunity to bring you up to speed.
We do, yeah.
So you are in the Obama administration for, what was that?
Both terms.
Both terms.
Yes.
So 5 years.
Almost 6 years.
Almost 6 years, okay. Talk to me a little bit about what it was like to work under his administration and the uniqueness of that point in history.
I'm laughing because, it actually was one of the best times of my life. To see communities, to see the country as a whole work together. To see, a positive initiative take place, and you can actually see the change. So when you see something like the unemployment rate going down, right? That means that we're adding jobs to the economy. So when you see unemployment rate going down, you see the number of jobs are being added to the economy. When you see that there are more businesses opening up, when you see those cranes moving again in the cities that we would travel across the country and see, it was such a good feeling, Troy.
Right.
And knowing that you were a part of that, we were a part of that, it just makes me smile. You can see me gleaming about it now because I look back on it like, wow, it's great times to see that taking place. One of the things I think was actually really personal for me is to share, for the first time ever, President Obama appointed, he didn't appoint. President Obama opened up the opportunity for his appointees to come to Camp David. So we had a retreat at Camp David, and it was really, really something else.
Right.
To be there, to be involved, to see that, to be on a basketball court with all the rest of them. When I was playing basketball,
Right.
driving around in the golf carts, playing video games, bowling. We did all this at Camp David.
Right.
It was amazing.
Right.
But he did that because of our hard work. He said, I want you all to relax and enjoy yourselves. And so, as you know, when we took our appointed roles, Congress at that time cut out us receiving bonuses. So, this was one of the ways that he rewarded us for our hard work. But I can say that, definitely tell you, I really enjoyed it. I thought that it was something that really began to change the trajectory of this country in a positive way. And the great part about it is, you begin to see, look beyond politics. Again, I worked in the Bush administration as a fellow, as a president management fellow, and at the time we actually did a great job of getting folks in homes for the first time when I worked at HUD. Probably could have done a better job by telling them two things. Hey, today's not your day, and that's not the right product.
Right.
Because at that time, one of our southeastern states led the country in default rate.
Right.
But it still meant that people had opportunity to get into homes for the first time. So government, no matter where you are, whether it's under a Republican or Democratic leadership, there were positive things that were taking place. And that's something that led me to where I am today. Decided to when the administration came to its sunset, I wanted to take my chance, and I said no to corporate and to run my own shop. and to help to do the two things I've done for the last 15, almost 20 years, is to help folks with access to capital, help them with affordable housing initiatives or people who are looking to buy retail. So that's what we do now at Capital Fortitude Business Advisors, is help people with access to capital. We help them to become certified, whether you're a minority entity or you're a female entity, or you're a veteran. And we also help business development. We help corporations to find those suppliers as well too. And so I'm enjoying doing that at this time.
I would have to imagine that as great as the two administrations under Obama would have been, and the impact you were having, that all people who work in government start to see the end of the term coming up, and does nervousness set in about what the next move is going to be, and how did you transition your mind to I'm going to be coming out of politics,
right,
and out of an administration, and making the leap into entrepreneurship?
Sure. I think for many of us, again, I have colleagues who went into corporate America. I have colleagues who left and went to the nonprofit arena. I have other colleagues who became elected officials. And so we looked at it more of a training ground for our next thing. Mm-hmm. For those who wanted to go into corporate America, great. Those who wanted to go run and run an NGO, great. Or those who wanted to become an entrepreneur, start their own initiatives, startups. And you can see all the entrepreneurial initiatives that are taking place in this country. We got a chance to see that firsthand, how that works. And so it was a little uneasy, I would tell you. I had some pretty great offers before I left the administration, and I said no to it. Because I knew that coming from an entrepreneurial family, I had to take the initiative to try my own shop. Mm-hmm. It's where I come from. It's what I do. Right. It's what I've seen as a kid, as I've described earlier. And so, yeah, it was a little uneasy, a little scary. Mm-hmm. You're responsible for somebody else's life, making sure you're making payroll and you're doing well. And, right now that's what I do. And we have a great team in place. But it feels good going into the office every day knowing that it's yours, mm-hmm. right? And that you are making a difference in somebody else's life. And you have the working components of learning how to do it. And a great part about it is, I have friends in corporate. If I need help, I give them a call. Right. I have some friends who are elected officials. I give them a call. Right. Got friends who are in running government entities, or I even have friends who are in this current administration. I give them a call. Right. Because, again, from my tutelage, it's always that we don't have enemies. We have folks who have common interests, and that's something that I've always taken to heart, and to make sure that I'm continuing to pour into somebody else's dream, and hopefully they'll continue to pour into my dream as well too.
So you just mentioned all the people that you can give a call if you need some assistance. Sure. And one of the common threads I've heard in the various interviews is the power of networking. Yes. And the people who have been most successful in business have a tremendous and extraordinary network that they can tap into. Yeah. Talk to me about, how do you cultivate that skill? Is it something that's innate, mm-hmm. or, how important is having a network to your success?
For me, it's just as important as it is as you wake up every day, you wash your face, you brush your teeth. You have to have it, especially in the entrepreneurial world. Networking to me is it's almost like an art. It really is. It's an art knowing that you have the opportunity. That's the key word. The opportunity to get something from someone else that you need. Right. You may not even know what that is, but if you go into a room, know that the first thing in your mindset should be that you have to give yourself to someone first so they can see mm-hmm. that you have an open hand. And you have to check your ego at the door. Mm-hmm. If you don't do that, your ego will check you, right. and you'll find yourself on the outside looking in. And I found that earlier as a child, you just had to be afraid. I would tell you, Troy, one of the best things for me is playing sports as a kid. No matter what your sport is, football, baseball, soccer, tennis, track. But getting knocked on your butt as a kid,
Right.
knowing that I had to pick myself up, allowed me to realize that no one's going to help me. And also the ability to identify competition. I have a mindset that, or a notion that says that competition doesn't create character; it builds it, right? And so when you think of whatever you're doing, it's competition, but it's also bringing your character out. The networking really allows you to bring your character out, so people can see who you are, and people are attracted to people who have an open spirit of themselves. They have an open vessel. People say, hey, I feel comfortable talking to that individual. And people will become drawn to you by doing that. And so I realized that as a child, but I also something that you do have to work on. Sometimes I don't like talking to people. Sometimes if I'm out somewhere, if I'm at a store or a mall, I'll put my earphones on and I'll just listen to my music because that's what motivates me. But sometimes I do it because I just want to be in my own space. Right. So you have to make time for yourself too. Right. So if you don't make time for yourself, you can't be anything to anyone else.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Well said. Speaking of the sports analogy, I played halfback too. I was halfback, and I remember when you get into the first game, it's that first hit that you're concerned about, but once it happens, it's like, oh, it wasn't as bad as I was building it up in my mind. And
right.
You can move on from there, right? So
right.
you need to get knocked down and back up.
Right.
So another thing I know about you, when you transitioned out of the administration and started your own business, is that you also focused on joining boards and giving back from a board perspective.
Yes.
Talk to me a little bit about the importance of being on a board and how that plays a role in your success from an entrepreneurship standpoint.
Yeah, I think that it goes back to what I mentioned before about volunteering your time. When you volunteer your time, you really begin to see that so many different things will actually open up for you. I remember, I'll go back to something I did in graduate school. I was working part-time at the YMCA, and I was working in the after-school program. And this is after my Morehouse days, right? So I'm thinking, wow, okay, I got this great Morehouse degree, but I'm working part-time at the YMCA. Something's wrong with this.
Right.
But I realized what it was doing was the character building. I was helping these kids figure out what they wanted to be when they grew up. And I would have different parents say, hey, you help my kid. Why don't you come to this event? And they start inviting me to stuff. And I didn't know that the people who were inviting me to different things, that they were elected officials, they were CEOs. Mm-hmm. There were people of influence. Mm-hmm. There were people of various backgrounds. And I didn't realize that. But looking back on it, those folks began to become my base of when I needed things or if I needed guidance and directions. And so coming back to your question, it was really the volunteering my time really taught me how I can make differences in someone else's lives. And so I always said, I want to volunteer and spend my time on boards where I'm making differences and something that's important to me. So I serve on the National Black MBA Board. As you know, really, I have to say really thanks to you because you were the first person who introduced me to NFBPA. I'm sorry, National Forum Black.
National Black MBA.
National Black MBA. I'm thinking about NFBPA, but
right.
National Black MBA. It is. But I'm thinking about that because they had just moved to Atlanta from Chicago. Right. And there was an opportunity that was open during that time, and I have to thank you for that. Because being in that place, I really began to see, and I'd worked with the local chapter for some time. There was a change in leadership, but it was an opportunity for me to say, hey, I can make some differences here. And so serving on that board has been something I really do value. I serve on Wellstar Research Board, where in my role on that board, whenever there are different products or different procedures that are coming into place, they show how it affects the person who's under that knife, if you will, for lack of better words, as it relates to cost, making sure that it's affordable, making sure that the family is involved, all those sort of things. So I serve on that board as a consumer to say, hey, this is going to affect this person in this way or that way. I serve as chairman of Fort McPherson. I was appointed to that board by our governor, and here in Georgia, and we're developing 142 acres of land to have retail, hotel, affordable housing, et cetera, in places next door to Tyler Perry Studios. And I really do enjoy working in that capacity because we're helping to change a city, part of a city in this respective community that hasn't seen development in almost 40 years. And so I really do enjoy spending that time. I serve on another board in Florida called the Florida 8A Alliance. And that's where folks who have went through the 8A program and learning how to work together, to bond together, that has training and development for entrepreneurs who have their own government-based small business, if you will. They work a lot in government contracting, so I enjoy serving that board as well. And of course, close to home right here, I recently appointed to Morehouse College Department of Business and Economics Advisory Board. And so helping my dear old Morehouse is something that is really special to me, to give back to the students, to give back to Morehouse that gave me the opportunity to be where I am today. And so there's a couple others, but those are the ones who really just hit home. And of course, Operation Hope. I serve on the Southeastern Board. I've been on that board for several years now. And I do enjoy spending my time and effort doing that.
It's amazing that you have time to focus on the business with all of the time you put into these other organizations, but that just speaks to the power of giving back and networking as well. A few more questions. One, is there any challenges that stand out in your mind that were unique to the fact that you were a black man in this position that you had to overcome, and how did that also shape your outlook on business?
No, I'll be honest with you. It is still eye-opening. I have, as you know, I've been in corporate America. I have served one president and under one political affiliation, served another, have done well at the highest level there is. And still I will run into other executives and say, hey, well, we love to work with you, but we're not sure we can, can you really deliver? We're not sure. And I'll tell you something. Most recently, I ran to an executive of a head of an organization, head of a financial institution, who was more still questioning whether I was able to do the work and working in my capacity for my firm with this entity. And I had to say, listen, did you see my resume?
Right.
Oh, I forgot. I'm African-American descent. Is that the challenge here? Because after I looked over your portfolio and looked at your other executives, they don't have half of the experience and relationship that I have, but they're working in that capacity. So you're speaking to me in a way, well, can I actually deliver? I can't say that's because of the way that I look. But if I had to guess, I would say it's 9 times out of 10 because of that.
Right. And that's the thing that's even maybe more difficult in this day and age than in maybe past decades, where it was more overt and you knew exactly what it was. Now it's so opaque.
Yes.
And you know that's probably what it is, but it's hidden so well and whatnot that it even puts doubt in your own mind a little bit, right?
It does. I know. I'm so glad you just said that because that's why it's important to surround yourself with like minds and people who may look like you or who may not look like you, and you talk about these sort of things. We do it a lot in Leadership Atlanta, and I do enjoy being a part of that. I would tell you, Troy, for me, all the folks who I said I was either raised or influenced or mentored by, they are not afraid to speak their tongue. And I would tell you, for me, I have probably in most recent times have asked the question, like, when do you get past this? And I've asked the person in front of me, just blatantly, what is the issue? What is the challenge?
Right.
Is it because of something that you're not familiar with? And I'll put it in a very vague way. So, I won't call out to say it's because of the way that I look. I'll put it in a very vague way. I'll put it back to them. But what I continually do, Troy, is I listen to music a lot. I listen to a lot of scores of movies, and I listen. I get really encouraged and excited when I hear a great part of the score, and because I'm thinking of myself as a character in that movie that's overcoming great odds. So every day I wake up to listening to scores of music. Every day I spend time, as you already know, volunteering to somebody else's efforts or somebody else's development, because I know what it means to go through that. So I'm reminded of it every day. So when I think about giving up and I think about taking a step back, what I do on my daily walk does not allow me to say, hey, I have to give up. It gets hard. It is challenging. I would tell you, it really does. But I have to believe that everything that we do is ordained. You and I meeting, we have different circles. We've been in different circles for years, but we didn't meet until you actually were in your role at National Black MBA. And we were like, how come we didn't know each other? How come we, but now that we have done that, we've continued to be in a place where we can try to support and to reach out and to pour into each other. And that's what we have to do.
Right.
That's what it really boils down. No matter who you are, no matter what political affiliation you have, no matter what your background is, one thing that I do know that's consistent is that we're here for a reason. And we have a job to do. We had to reach our fulfillment of which we were born to make differences in somebody else's life. And we had to do that every single day. And some days are great, some days are tougher than the others. But I think at the end, when you look back on it, you just believe that, was it all worth it? Absolutely. And we just had to keep building.
Right.
Yeah.
What nugget or two would you give the listener who is a would-be entrepreneur, who has some challenges in front of them, or trying to figure out what they should focus on, or should they stay in corporate America, or what have you? What one or two nuggets would you give them?
Sure. I would say, now, I would tell you, for some people who decide to be in corporate America and do well, I think they should continue to be on that path, if that's your path, because everyone should not be an entrepreneur. It's just not, But I think that if you do want to do that, then you have to find time to invest into yourself, but you also have to find time to invest in somebody else's dreams. You have to volunteer. You have to mentor. You have, and I mean have to, whether you're a guy or girl, guy or woman. You have to spend that time pouring what you have into someone else. So the nugget is really finding a place to serve, finding a place to a nonprofit organization to put your time and effort behind. And sometimes it could be at home. It could be pouring your time into your own children's life, getting them involved into extracurricular activities. Like we just both talked about, sports, getting involved in sports, getting involved into music, getting involved into something that's going to enhance their character and allow their character to be tested at an early age. And so by doing that, you begin to solidify your grounds when you are tested and you're tried, as you are as a seasoned professional like yourself, that you can realize that you know where you come from. So you have to find out who you are. Every day you have to find out, Troy, I would say the second thing is that you have to find out what is your superpower. We all have superpowers. You just mentioned probably mine's probably one of the networking ones. I guess I do a decent job of it,
Right.
But you have to find out what your superpower is. And whatever that superpower is, it could be around law, it could be around government, it could be around math, it could be around science and technology, IT, whatever that superpower is. Build time and effort around whatever your interest is, and don't worry about, how do I make money out of this? I believe that when you put your time behind something that you're generally interested in, everything that you will want will come to you. It will come to you. It's ordained that way. It will. And so you have to have patience by working through saying, hey, I'm not as successful as I would like it to be. But then you have to look back at all the knowledge and the wisdom that you're acquiring now. So when the opportunity does present itself, you have to be ready. The final thing I will say, I know you asked for two, I'm going to give you three, is that very seldom do you have a second opportunity to make a first impression.
Mm-hmm.
So when you walk out that door every day, just know that you may run into that individual, that person that can actually change your life. So you have to be prepared.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like we were at Morehouse. We were always taught, always have a pin on you.
Right.
You just never know, right? So knowing that very seldom you have a second opportunity to make a first impression, just make that first impression count.
Right. Well said.
Yeah.
Cassius, thank you for being on Give 'em in the Business.
Yes.
I greatly appreciate it. You dropped a lot of nuggets on the audience today and on me as well.
Yeah.
Everyone, that was Cassius Butts, who is still doing tremendous things in the Atlanta and Southeast and the United States as a whole entrepreneurial scene. Glad to have him on the show, and hopefully you learned something today.
Thanks for having me.
You're welcome.
All right.